All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Within Tolerance. And today we have Eric from Avant Manufacturing here. And I guess without further ado, Eric, how did you get into manufacturing? Tell us a little bit about your story. Go as far back as you want. Tell us as much and as many details as you want, and just take the floor.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess it kind of goes back as far as probably around high school. I don't know. I was always hands-on with stuff. I always like to work on things, make things and whatnot. But my first my entry into manufacturing was in the high school years. So I used to be a lot into action sports, BMX, skateboarding, scooter riding. When I was in Portland, I did a little bit of snowboarding. I got a slack line in the backyard here in Indiana. So this is kind of like stuff I like to do. I like to do stuff like that. And at the time I was doing, I guess I should say for one, I went to a technical high school where we did basically half of the time we were spending doing academics. So we had block scheduling where we would spend twice as much time as normal people would in our, I guess, main academic classes. So that way I'd be able to rotate off of academics into shop class. And in high school, I ended up taking welding and fabrication. It just seemed really cool. Like at the time, I was really contemplating taking machine shop because I was riding bikes a lot, and I was just thinking, if I get in front of the lathe, I could make some pegs for my bike. Like that'd be awesome. So, it kind of started out around that time. I ended up taking the welding and fabrication class instead, though, just because I don't know. I heard the teacher machine shop was pretty cranky, and I had a lot of friends who were going into the welding stuff too, so that definitely helped. But yeah, it was about that time. So I was learning welding fabrication, and I got pretty good at it. And at the same time, I was then riding scooters and stuff. So, and back then there weren't very many good parts. There was literally just like razor scooters, and people were modifying them using like strips of aluminum from Home Depot, like epoxied and bolted on the stuff, and it was just all over the place. So I'd found out from a guy, because I was really into cars too, and I liked Subarus, and I would always lurk the IWSTI forums. So yeah, I lurked the IWSTI forums for a while there, and just like followed people's builds and stuff. And I remember this one guy, he built this beautiful car, and I don't know what he did for a living, but I just remember like seeing stuff that he had designed and made for his car. And he was using this thing called SolidWorks, and I was like, whoa, what is that? I need to know what that is. Because I was like attempting to design stuff for like my scooters and whatnot using Google SketchUp. And so I ended up finding out about SolidWorks, and somehow magically came across a copy of it. I don't know, So, and so I was just designing stuff like after school, and like in the winter and stuff. I'd literally just bury myself in a computer trying to figure out how to do stuff in SolidWorks, and I just fell in love with it. It was really awesome. So I ended up designing a handful of different scooter parts that like solved problems, and they worked for me and they worked for my friends. And then I didn't realize, but there was like a lot of other people who rode scooters too. So I was like, hey, like what if we could, I don't know, sell these, like make more and sell them. So yeah, I worked, because I was in fabrication at school. I ended up getting I think my second manufacturing job was working at this place that had these giant laser cutters and plasma cutters. I basically operated a CNC plasma cutting head that like, it was a gantry that had like 4 cutting heads, and the table was probably, I don't know, half the length of a football field. And we just made really big parts on it. So I only did the operating and stuff, but it was pretty cool. And I ended up buying these laser cut parts from that company that I worked at. And then I would go home, and me and my buddy would like, clean up the edges from laser cutting. And then I had built my own little bench vise fixture to like form these parts, right? So that was kind of like really the beginning of manufacturing for me. And after I had that experience and like selling some of those parts and whatnot, it was just a small business at the time. It was cool. I ended up getting a job in a machine shop. I guess pretty much because of my experience and because I had experience with SolidWorks too, and was just like good with computers. The shop was like, it was just full of older guys who were getting ready to retire, still cranking hand wheels and stuff, and they had a couple CNC machines there, but they really only had one guy who could program for the most part. So they basically brought me in as like the youngest guy to try and learn how to program stuff. So yeah, then I got in front of Mastercam and learned how to program CNC lathes, and that was really awesome. It was a really cool job too, because it was like we were manufacturing stuff for the semiconductor industry, so I got to work with like some pretty, I don't know, bizarre materials, I guess, and like combinations of materials and just so many different processes. It wasn't just machining. Like we did plastic welding, we did roto molding. I would be turning like Teflon bars so that way we could like press sapphire rods into them, and then they'd get like,
oh wow,
yeah. And we had these aluminum housings, and what else did we do? We like did electronic stuff where we'd have to put our own. I don't know. I didn't know anything about that stuff. I didn't get involved in that much, but some of these assemblies that we'd make they were just wild. They were really cool though, because I got to learn a lot. So yeah, I worked at that machine shop for about, I was operating the mill for like 2 weeks, and then they like gave me a laptop with Mastercam and said, figure it out. And then, yeah, basically worked there for about a year and a half or 2 years and learned a whole lot. Super fun job. And then I guess that was pretty much about the time when, so I grew up like outside of Philadelphia. And then after that, I was pretty much ready to move, because I had always known since I was young that I would not like stick around for very long. So I ended up moving to Salt Lake City, or a suburb just outside of it, because my uncle had lived there, and like while my uncle was in Pennsylvania, we were kind of like best friends. He was a super cool dude, and we used to cook a lot of food together and stuff. And yeah, so he would always send me these pictures out of his like kitchen window, just like the view of the mountains out there. And I was like, oh, I gotta come out and visit. So I ended up like going out for, was it a week, and visiting. And I just remember I was flying out on a Friday, and I was on a phone call with him the day before, like that Thursday. We were on the phone for like an hour, and he was just telling me about like different stuff, and we were talking about like what we could do like while I'm out there. And I was just like, that's it, I'm sold. I'm living there. How much you want for a room for rent there? And he's like, just, what are you talking about? Just calm down. Just wait till you see it. And I'm like, nah, it's all right. Just let me know how much you want. And so, yeah, I kind of like had already decided at that point. But I'm glad that when I went out, it was just beautiful, and it was amazing out there. So after I got to see it, I was glad that I'd made that decision. So it was cool. And then I remember I kind of shocked my mom, because like I didn't tell her about any of it until after I got back. And then, so I get back, right? I think it was like a Saturday night. And so I didn't want to bother her, like, after I just got back. But like we're eating breakfast that Sunday morning, and I was telling her, I was like, so I think I'm gonna be moving out. She said, oh yeah, what are you gonna do? And I said, I'm gonna move with Uncle Mo in Salt Lake City. And she's like, oh wow, wasn't expecting that. Like that's pretty far. And I was like, yeah, I know. And she's like, oh well, that's good, honey. You're gonna have a good time. When do you plan on going? And I said, well, I have to be in Brooklyn next weekend, so I don't know, 2 weeks. She's like, what? Freaked out. 2 weeks. That was definitely a bit of a shock to her for sure. So, but yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of how I am sometimes. So, but yeah, it was cool. I actually ended up only living there for about 2 months though, because at the time I was on like this fucking weird real estate investing kick where I was trying to learn, all kinds of shit. Like, what do they call it now? There's bird something. I forget what it's called. Some term. And then, obviously there's flipping houses and all kinds of stuff like that. But I forget all, like, a decent amount of, like, the terms that they use. But I was, like, super into, like, figuring out how to get to the real estate industry. And then, but I'd spent through a good amount of my savings and started collecting a little bit of debt, just living while trying to do that. And then the realization hit me that like I should probably make some money, and I probably don't have the experience or the skills to like be jumping in like that just yet. So I was like, all right, well, time to get a job again. And I knew I could get a machining job or a designing job or something like that. And I always liked doing that stuff anyway. So, but I couldn't find anything in like Salt Lake City area that interested me. And pretty much the thought was, well, like, fuck it. I mean, I moved across the country once. Like, I could pretty much move anywhere. Like, I don't really care, honestly. Like, if it's a cool place and I got a sweet job, like, I'm down for whatever. So I ended up just looking at all different cities, like just looking for jobs and stuff. And I've always kind of wanted to live in California and just check it out and stuff. So I was mostly focusing on San Francisco and Los Angeles. And turns out I ended up finding like this awesome job in LA. Yeah, it was one of the best jobs that I've had, like up until that point for sure. So I was working at an aftermarket motorcycle parts manufacturer, and I basically got to do all the R&D, the product design, and programming and setting up the machines. We had like 5 Haas machines, and we had operators to run them. So it was just really awesome. Like, I don't know, I got to do all the fun stuff that I like to do, and I got to help out with computer stuff too. We ended up building a new website that could handle all of our products and whatnot. I just remember at the time, like, we were trying to do like WordPress site with like the WooCommerce or whatever, and we were like we had this guy who came in and designed it and built it for like $4,000 or something like that. And he's showing us, and it's like, oh, cool, yeah, it's got like 200 products in it. And it's like, oh, cool. And then I upload like the rest of the SKUs. And we had like 26,000 SKUs, and it immediately broke. It just froze. It was done. So I ended up building a site in Drupal instead, and that's I don't know if you guys are familiar with like website CMS systems, but it's pretty powerful stuff, and it was one of my favorite CMS systems for sure. It's just crazy what you can do with it. But yeah, I worked there for like 2 years, so LA life, that was pretty awesome. I don't know, man, it was cool. The beach, the mountains. Yeah, I was always like on road trips or like camping trips, like every other couple weeks or something. I lived in like a 7-bedroom house with like 6 roommates, and it was pretty sweet. Where like our neighborhood backed up to like the Santa Susana Mountains, so like we just walked down the neighborhood, and all of a sudden there's hiking trails. So it was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, then after that, it was just like I just saved up my money while I was there. And because I'd always wanted to start my own shop. Even back when I was in Pennsylvania, I had looked into renting space to like start a shop, just like fabrication and stuff, to like make my scooter parts at the time and whatnot like that. So yeah, I mean, I'd saved up my money. I'd figured out how to do a lot of stuff. So I figured I knew pretty much everything I needed to and could do everything I needed to run a business, at least a small one anyway. So yeah, it was pretty much like once I was done at that job, it was pretty much just like, well, where do I want to go next? Because I couldn't see myself staying in LA either. And I had a friend who lived in Portland, and I'd visit it like a few months before I ended up moving there. I visited up there because I didn't even know what Portland was. What's a Portland? I don't know. So, but I went up there and I visited, and it was cool because it's beautiful. It's green. That was one of the things I missed a lot when I was in like Utah and LA, is that it's just very dry in both of those places. You don't get the lush greenery that you do like, where I'm from in Pennsylvania. So it was cool. It was beautiful. Lots of mountains. I got volcanoes, tons of hiking, outdoors. Loved it. So I was like, all right, cool. And at the time, like I was doing a little bit of research too, just trying to figure out, well, if I'm going to start a business, I should probably look into a little bit of stuff related to the business up there. And it turned out that Oregon as a state had been leading the country for the previous 2 years in the growth of the manufacturing sector. So that was pretty awesome to know. And I was like, well, if you're going to start a manufacturing business, I mean, Oregon sounds like a good state to do it in. Um, so yeah, I went up there and pretty much just, not a lot of people know this part of it. So this is when Avant started, and I rented out a 2,000 square foot unit where pretty much like 1,000 of it was office space, and it was cool because like there was a big open front lobby area, and that I didn't really use for anything. Like there's just really no need to have it, honestly. But and then there was like two private offices behind that, and all of that was like next to the shop space. Um, so basically, like, I've literally only got my savings. I got to put, down payment on the machine. I got to tool it up. I got to have money for security deposit and rent and other business expenses and stuff. And it's like, if I got this big place, do I really want to like pay rent for a house or something, or like an apartment? Like, especially like when starting a business, as risky as that is, like, no. So I need to save as much money as possible. So it was cool how it kind of worked out. I ended up like using the one private office as my office, and the other one as my living space, So
That is awesome.
dude, it was pretty. I mean, a lot of people start businesses out of their homes or out of the garages. I just kind of did it the other way around. I figure, like the business needs more things than I need. Like I could live out of a van. Like I could live out of anything, like, and I have, so it's like, dude, just to have a bedroom tucked away back there for me, that's good. I got a gym membership. I go to the gym every day. I grab my shower while I'm there. It's like, I eat out pretty much all the time anyway. So it's like, whatever. Yeah, just trying to make it work. So, and that worked out pretty well because I ended up, I think after I like had to like outlay all that cash in the beginning, I figured with my expenses the way that they were, I only had, I think, 2 months worth of cash. So it was pretty much like you need to get some work in, otherwise 2 months you'll be out of business.
Yeah, that's not much of a runway for sure.
No, man, definitely not.
So that actually gets into a couple of questions that we had from listeners. So like DBAM on Instagram, and I think there was somebody else that asked, how did you start finding new customers, starting out with nothing? I mean, besides a unit and a machine.
Yeah, so that's, dude, it's pretty much just like, I guess you could probably find like answers to that in any kind of sales book or something like that. But like for me, it was literally just do whatever you can. Like literally just talk to everyone you meet about it, tell them what you're up to. Like maybe they know someone, who knows, cold call, cold email. Like I did tons of cold calls, Is it like kind of nerve-wracking at first? Yeah. And then after the first 3 calls, you just get over it and you just keep going. So, and it's surprisingly in the manufacturing industry, a lot of people are actually welcome to it. Like, just because like a lot of people can't find good suppliers for stuff, or maybe their office staff know that the buyers need good suppliers or something. So it's just like, there were so many times when I was absolutely greeted happily. Like, oh yeah, you do CNC machining? Like, yeah, here, let me put you through to Stacy or Bill or whatever. And, we got some parts you can quote. So I definitely recommend cold calling for sure.
Were you targeting specific industries? Like, I mean, you had experience with aftermarket motorcycle parts. Were you looking at, automotive companies, engineering companies, or just everything under the sun?
Yeah, pretty much everything. I mean, at that time, like I literally had I couldn't be picky. Like I said, I had 2 months worth of cash, and then I was like broke. So, and bills were still going to be coming in, of course. So it's like I had no room to be picky. It was just like, if you gave me the opportunity to make something for you, I was going to make it. So yeah, I mean, I did a bunch of stuff, and I would reach out to engineering firms and other machine shops who looked like they were really busy or something, or other machine shops who might have specialized in a different type of machining and might have sent work my way if they didn't want to do it because I could do something that maybe they'd prefer not to or something. So yeah, and then also Instagram. I mean, like obviously I want to build kind of a brand on Instagram, just to like, I don't know. I just like communicating with people, and I thought maybe promoting on there and stuff, and just being on Instagram would potentially help get work in. Even to this day, I can't really say. I'm not really sure that it has. I might have got like a couple jobs through Instagram, but I did get one very good customer through Instagram, that's for sure. And that was, I remember, it was just a couple months after starting. I was just looking around all through Instagram, different companies that did different stuff, and I came across this one company, Varus Engineering, and I was like, oh, cool. And I started browsing their page and stuff, and I was like, all right, fuck it, let me like just slide in that DM real quick. And so I did, and so what do you know? Like, they're like, all right, yeah, we'll send you something. And I guess at the time they had machinists and stuff, like suppliers, whatnot. And at the time they were having trouble with these lower control arms. I guess, like, I don't know if like the price was getting too high on them. The machinist was having a difficult time with them. It's just, they're not exactly like super easy to hold or anything. I don't know if you guys have seen them. I've made them in the past. They're like the big wishbone looking parts or whatever.
Yeah. I've seen them a couple times on your page.
Yeah, those guys. So I'm pretty sure those were the first parts that I made for them. The first or second, I don't know. But so basically, like, after I made those parts, I guess they were happy with them, and I liked making them. And yeah, it was a little challenging at first. I was stoked with it, and I guess they might have figured, hey, well, if he can make this and it works out, then let's just send him a bunch of other stuff that we got. So they ended up sending me more work and stuff, and just communicating with them. It was like, I don't know, we became friends in the process, because, like, dude, it's a small company. Just like at the time, it was literally 2 guys. Now we're up to 4. So, but yeah, it was just really cool. And I always like making those kind of parts, and I could tell just from like their page and stuff, like the amount of engineering, like, work that goes into it, and the amount of care that they take when designing things. So, and I could totally appreciate that. So, and one of the things I always commented on was that they knew how to design for manufacturing. I'm sure both of you guys know that after you see some drawings and some models and stuff, not everyone knows how to design for manufacturing. So, but these guys just like always knocked it out. Like, when they sent me a design, it was just like ready to be cut. So I was like,
that's awesome. That's really rare.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, cold calls, Instagram, don't be afraid to cold email. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, whatever you can do, you got to reach out to people, like, talk to people, tell them what you do. I mean, people I've met in coffee shops and stuff will be like, oh yeah, my uncle works at blah, 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 or whatever. And I'm just like, cool. And just hand them a card, like, whatever. So yeah, you never know. Cause it's not necessarily that you need like a bunch of customers, right? It's like, if you get like 1 or 2 good customers, like that can help a whole lot. So, so yeah, but still don't just, and anywhere that you can talk about it, just do it. But any other questions you got lined up?
Oh yeah, we got a ton. So I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit. You recently, I guess you could say, got acquired by Varus. So how did that all go down? I mean, I know I saw you list your machines for sale. Were you planning on moving anyway, and then that opportunity popped up, or how did that all shake out?
Yeah. So basically, how it worked out was, I guess you could say I pretty much got burned out on the job shop life, like, as far as like just being a mostly like one-man band or whatever, especially doing job shop work. I just got tired of it. It was just like, I was just not seeing a good future in it for myself. That's all. And like the kind of work that I'd like to do most, and the kind of work that like gives me the most satisfaction and joy, is it's not really job shop work. Like, do I love always being challenged? Yeah, of course. Like, creating new programs for stuff and thinking of awesome solutions for like work holding. Yeah. But yeah, the job shop business, and like me as an operator of that business, is just not, I wasn't about it anymore. That's pretty much, so I was already interested in like, I was trying to talk myself out of it at the same time, but like, I kind of already felt like, I'm basically done with this. Like, I mean, I wanted to figure out something to do to like still make use of like the Instagram page and the connections that I've made, and still potentially do something like as far as like educational materials, like creating them, whether it's like video content or something like that. But yeah, at that point, like I already knew that I was ready to be done with job shop stuff. So yeah, and I talked to his name's Eric at Paris as well. So Eric Hazen, I talked to him about it a handful of times because like we're friends, and he would always like try and are you sure you want to do that? Like, is that just think it through and all that kind of stuff. And so I would just talk to him about it here and there. But yeah, once I like fully decided like that's what I want to do, then that was pretty much it. So, and I told him like before, like in the few times that I'd like had discussions with him about it, I was like jokingly like, hey, you want to buy the machines? Like, and like over the years, like pretty much ever since I started supplying them with parts, he's always joked with me, like, he's like, so when you come into Indiana? And I'd just be like, nah, dude, why don't you guys come to Oregon? So I was just like, Indiana's flat. It's in the middle of nowhere. But honestly, ever since I come here, I've been surprised. I do like it. It's different, and I like it. But yeah. So anyway, I was ready to be done with job shop life, and I was ready for like just the new chapter, something different. And so, so yeah, I listed the machines, and yeah, I was basically just trying to sell everything off and then figure out something to do next. Now, if the deal with Varus didn't happen, like that wasn't even the original plan, honestly, because like I wasn't sure about their position. Like I knew they were only like 3 people company, and like to take on another person as well as like payments on a machine and stuff like that. Like there's a lot, there's a lot riding on that, and it was a very big risk for them. So I was not pushing them to do it or anything, and I wasn't. I didn't want to, I just saw it as like a potential for a big risk, and if things went bad, like these are my friends, and I would never want there to be bad blood over something if it didn't work out. So, so like my first plan was to literally just piece it out. Let's like sell off stuff, and then just take whatever money I got with it and just sit on it while I go on a long road trip and figure out what I want to do next. But it ended up working out that they were interested in taking on the machine, taking on me, and we would continue to make their parts. We might do some job shop parts here and there. But yeah, and so we ended up working out a deal where they basically, the way it worked was like, yeah, they just basically bought the assets of my business. I had like dissolved Avant, and I accepted employment over at Varus. So yeah, that's kind of how it worked out, and it was cool because I still got to take my road trip. Like I sold the VF2, and then the UMC was getting shipped to Indianapolis, and the VF2 is like it was bound for Chicago. So we were able to actually get both machines on the same truck, and just everyone could save a little bit on freight by like splitting it up. So we did that, and like I fit pretty much everything else from the shop onto that truck as well. And yeah, it was a packed truck for sure. Like I was literally playing Jenga with or like Tetris or something like that with the compressor and the forklift and all kind of stuff. So, but it made it out there, and literally like the truck came and picked up everything on Friday, and then I just like worked my ass off, or was it a Monday? I don't know. I just worked my ass off like throughout the weekend to like clean up the shop, and then me and my girlfriend and my dog went and we had already set up the van for like road trips and stuff anyway, because we would already take it to the beach and take it to the mountains and stuff like that. So I had this Chevy Astro van with a queen size bed in the back of it. We had the curtains and the lights and all kinds of stuff. We had totes underneath for storing like shoes and food and clothes and all that stuff. So we were geared up already. So yeah, after like selling off everything, it was kind of just like, all right, well, we're taking a month-long road trip, and we're gonna take the longest way we can to get to Indianapolis. So, so yeah, that was exciting for sure, and it was a big relief to like actually just get to chill out for a little bit, get to just drive around and check out some cool sites and not have to worry so much about like, oh, sales and I got to do this, I got to get back to him, this, that, and the other thing, like. Yeah, and then it's just good. This is good. So that's basically how the deal with Varus worked out. Yeah, like I said, they bought the assets. I accepted employment, and yeah, so far it's been good. It's been good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of touched on a few of the questions. I had no idea that you sold the VF2, but you touched on, so one of our listeners, Tom Zellick, TJ Zellick on Instagram, asked, do you still have as much freedom on the machine now that you technically work for the company you used to supply? And then his other question was to hear about your road trip, which we just kind of heard about. So yeah, do you still have, freedom to kind of work on the machine as you want, or like, are you running production all the time for Varus, or how does that work out?
So, I mean, I guess I wasn't exactly clear on that question, what that meant, because like freedom on the machine, obviously we still got to make parts and make money, right? So,
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, am I going to like make some random, am I going to make myself a fancy pepper grinder on the machine? Probably not. But then again, I wouldn't do that if it's my machine anyway, because that's just like time that I could be spending making money. But,
right.
So, I mean, I have pretty much the same freedom on the machine when you think of it that way. Yeah, we got to make parts. We got to make money. It's not, yeah, I mean, but as far as like the freedom, as far as like creative freedom to do things the way I want to do with it, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of the same as when I was supplying them with parts, as far as like, I mean, I make all the decisions about tooling and work holding and pretty much like the process and all this kind of stuff. But it's honestly, it's really nice to like work with some smart guys to bounce ideas off of too. I mean, both Eric and Paul are some very smart engineers, and it's really nice to like have people to like bounce stuff off of. So, but yeah, as far as the freedom goes, absolutely. I mean, I got some samples of the Freza taper barrel tools today, so I'm excited to try those out. I've been talking to Alex, the product manager of NX. He's helping me with figuring out what's going on with some guiding curves and using those operations with these tools. And so, and I just recently built the vacuum work holding fixture. So I was very excited about that because that's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And now that I'm working at Varus, and Varus has a big need for that kind of fixture, it was pretty much like once I could explain to them like, hey, this is how it's going to help, then it was pretty much like, yeah, dude, do it. Like, let's go for it. So, and I still got to evaluate like, hey, do I want to make one or buy one? Like, of course we were looking to buy one at first. I talked.
So what made you choose to make one?
Yeah. So, well, first, like the first person I looked to for vacuum work holding is Jay Pearson. And so that's originally we were going to look into buying one of his units. So yeah, he's got a decent selection of sizes there. But I still wanted one. I still kind of wanted one that would like fill the work travel area of the machine a little bit better. And so, but that wasn't that big of an issue. So like I could take one that wasn't exactly sized the way that I wanted. That's fine. No big deal. Now, if we did buy one of his units, I was going to have to modify it on the bottom to put studs on to hold on to with the lang plate anyway. So I was like, okay, so now we got to buy it and then we got to modify it. Still not too bad, right? And then I was thinking about like, well, some of our parts that we're going to need to hold with the vacuum, we actually need to do like full 5-axis work on. And so now I'm starting to think about like, okay, well, how am I going to route this tubing and what's that going to look like? And so if it's real, once we got like talking about that, it was now we're touching on like, okay, let's start making our own territory, because it's like, if we're going to need to modify that much of something, and then still pay as much money for it as we would need to buy it. It's just like, we might as well just design what we want to begin with, right? So that's pretty much how that decision was made, because we needed the 5-axis for it, and I needed to be able to route compressed air through the table to do it. So yeah, I ended up just designing a fixture that would be able to do that. So I was able to design it like to the size that I want it. That would, like, because we have some parts that are really wide or really long, and I just want to find the best combination of like the width and length that would be good for the fixture. And even the smaller parts, like just to like nest as many as I can into a piece of material that gets held by the fixture. And then, so, and then, I ended up building the vacuum venturi right into the plate, into the fixture plate itself. So that way we could route compressed air the whole entire way. And then that way, because the compressed air is at the table, now when the vacuum chuck is not there, if I have some other kind of work holding item and it could make use of compressed air, boom, it's right there at the table already. So that was kind of the idea.
How'd you go about routing compressed air? Because the UMC doesn't have provisions for that stock, does it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, well, as far as, you still need to drill a hole in the table, right? So, and then you've got to have like a rotary union underneath, right? And then, I would, once it came out, like the through bore on the underside of the table, the C-axis there, then it's like, then I just have like a straight stainless steel pipe that goes from that to basically the underside of the trunnion, where there's already a plate there that you can remove. I removed the screws and stuff and took the plate off to see what was underneath, and it's just like, it's the motor and like the other cables and tubes that get routed for the C-axis. So like I just pop a hole through there, and just run the tube right through there, and then at that point it's literally just being routed with the other tubes and stuff that go and are being used for the B and C axis. So that just goes to the manifold that's in that little utility compartment thingy there, and then we bought a solenoid that can turn on or off the compressed air to the table just by giving it some 12-volt power. So yeah, that way eventually I'm going to wire it into the board, and that way I can program to turn on and off the vacuum or whatever is making use of the air at the table. So we could do like an M, whatever it is, I don't remember, 26 or whatever it is. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
So Eric, overall, how do you like the UMC 750? That was a question I had for you.
Yeah, I mean, it does what I need it to do for sure. It's like, it's a great value. Like, I mean, for that work envelope, and the power that you can get with it, and the spindle speed, and with all the other things, like I ended up paying $200,000 for that machine.
Did that come with the 15,000 RPMs?
Yeah, so this is the UMC 750 SS, 15K spindle, 1,000 PSI through spindle coolant. And yeah, I think that was like really the only option that I needed for it, because everything else that I wanted was like already there. So yeah, that ended up being like, I think it was like 190 something. So like ended up working out to like 200,000. But yeah, if you look at any other 5-axis machine with a comparable work envelope and the same features, like you're probably going to be paying at least 300,000. So, could you argue they're higher quality machines? Yeah, sure. But I mean, can I get my feet wet with 5-axis machining? Can I actually do 5-axis machining if I can't afford a $300,000 machine? Like, no, then I'm going to be stuck with, a smaller machine, or slapping a trunnion on a VF2 or VF4 or whatever, which, I didn't want to do that, because it's like, well, first of all, my VF2 is too small to have any real useful 5-axis stuff. And then if I have to buy a bigger machine, or even buying that trunnion, the trunnion's like 50 grand. Like, why do that when you could just put the down payment on the machine that you actually want? So, but yeah, overall, I like the machine. Yeah, I mean, it cut better than the VF2. It's it's got its quirks and stuff. Like, I was a little upset that I had like some of the issues that I did have with it in the beginning of the first year or whatever. They weren't necessarily like terrible issues or anything, but it was just like during a time when I'm like trying to find 5-axis work, I'm trying to learn how to 5-axis program, and trying to build my own post processor and stuff like that. It was just like I did not need issues with the machine on top of that. So, but overall, I would say, yeah, it's a good value machine, like the Haas brand in general.
And then we had a question from Camcraft, and he said, you started with the VF2 and then added a UMC. If you were to start up again, would you go straight for the UMC?
Probably, yeah. Because, I mean, especially with the experience I have now. Yeah. But it also depends on like the work that you can get for it. I mean, if you don't think you're going to get the work for it that makes it useful to have that, then, you know, you might want to think about that as well. But yeah, I mean, I really like it just because I don't like setting up a bunch of parts. I don't like creating a bunch of programs when I could just create one or two. Yeah, it's definitely, overall, I would say it's definitely a little bit more efficient. The only time that it seems to be worse is just post-processing. Like generating like actual 5-axis toolpaths and post-processing them, it just takes noticeably more time than 3-axis, you know? Like there'll be times when I'm literally waiting a half hour for something to post-process, and it's not even that crazy. So, yeah.
So speaking of post-processing, you spent a lot of time testing CAM systems. I know I've seen you, bounce through at least 3. What led you to stick with NX or even start looking at NX?
Well, NX has been the thing that I've always been looking for. I just never knew that it was NX. That's the thing that comes to it. So it's just like the way, I guess you could say it's kind of like the way my mind works. I'm always, even when I started working at the first machine shop with the semiconductor stuff, I was always questioning like why we did things the way that we did. Like why do we always have to enter, the spindle speed or the RPM or the surface feet per minute? Why are we always entering values like this when it's like most of the time it's repetitive work? And if it's not exactly repetitive, it's stuff that you could definitely calculate easily if you know all the variables. And I mean, even just, I don't know, I just like think about things and how they relate to one another a lot. So it's kind of hard to explain, but so basically before trying a few different CAM systems, I was like most people. I knew how to use SolidWorks to do my CAD stuff, and I did my programming in Mastercam. And those are 2 different systems. Is there Mastercam for SolidWorks? Yeah, and I've used it, and it's been helpful here and there. But it's still basically Mastercam just inside SolidWorks. It's not like there's not like a real true link, like a real good link between CAD and CAM. And that's what I was really looking for, because for me, especially like in the different jobs that I've had, whether it's doing job shop type work or even our own stuff, like revisions and like small changes to parts, things like that, like, if you're using 2 separate systems, it's just like you either have to completely like reprogram the part for the new model that you just brought in to the disconnected system, or you do some ugly workaround where you drop the new model right on top of the old one and just do the new tool paths in the areas that you need them. But then guess what? Next time someone else opens up that file, they've got like 3 or 4 different revisions of a body on top of another body and like tool paths going everywhere. Like you can't make sense of it. So it's just very, I don't know, it's just really cumbersome. And I was looking for a solution where it's like, it just doesn't make sense. Like why would you want to do CAD and CAM in 2 different interfaces? Like why not just do it in the same? Why can't they just all be linked together? Why can't like the system know what material I'm working on and know what tool material I'm working with and know the geometry of it? And like I have set the surface speed that I want with that. It could just calculate everything for me. I pretty much just want to be able to like automate stuff, and I was just looking for that kind of a solution. And so that's why I looked into like HSM Works, because that seemed like, oh, well, that's cool. That's like a CAM system inside SolidWorks, and it could do stuff like that. So I tried that, and I ended up using Inventor a little bit as well, since that was all kind of bundled from Autodesk at the time. So yeah, and I wanted a really good solution for that. And I like tinkering with computers and stuff, and even customizing more things if it's not like available from from the software vendor. So to like have good, I guess, to have like good ways, like good APIs and stuff, or like good ways to like hook into the software that you're using, just to do like a little bit of custom stuff that helps you out. I wanted to be able to do that, like, because I feel like you could potentially automate programming, if not all of it, then definitely a really large portion of it. So, and then it's like, well, and then you're working in 5-axis stuff, and it's like, so if you're using Mastercam and SolidWorks, like now, if you're doing 5-axis, now you need something like Vericut or Camplete, and it's like, if I have to like go ahead and spend time setting up my machine, my work holding, my tooling, and all that stuff in Mastercam, and then I have to do all that same stuff again in Vericut or Camplete to make sure that the stuff is good and it's not going to crash a machine, why am I entering all that stuff multiple times? So it wasn't until I learned about NX and I actually started looking into it really closely that I realized it was basically what I'd been looking for. It's all in one. You do your modeling there, you do your programming there. It's all working on the same models, the same assemblies. It gives you a lot of freedom in how you set that up. They have some good toolpaths and stuff. Great PLM system too, which I'm not using at the moment, but I'd really like to get into that eventually. And they make it really easy to like customize stuff. And like you can even, using their NX Open, you can even create your own basically like auxiliary programs for stuff. And you can even get down like into, I forget what it's called at the moment. But you can even get down and make your own like features for the program, which like update within the model. Like you can almost make your own like modeling features and like your own CAM toolpaths if like you're that smart and know how to do all that. So they just give you a lot of freedom to do stuff, and it's very, very powerful software. So, and it's like, if you're going to spend the time working in something and spend the money on something that's as expensive as most CAM softwares are, like you might as well get one and learn one that's going to last you a long time. And that's what I saw with NX. I saw that there is very slim chance that I would outgrow it, So that's what I wanted.
Yeah, that's a really fair approach for sure. So you've mentioned it a little bit, but what is your background in coding and computers? Because it seems like, just going back in your Instagram feed, even it seems like you enjoy creating a lot of code and automating things, like you said, and it definitely seems like you've got a little more knowledge than a lot of people on that kind of stuff. So how did you get into that, and what's your background on that side?
It's pretty much just like, well, I've always just like solving problems and like automating things because my mom says I'm lazy. So, it makes sense to automate stuff, right? So, that's kind of where it is. And it's also just like, my experience with it is trial and error. So like, I'm not any better than anyone listening when it comes to coding or anything like that. It's just that I've probably spent a lot more time banging my head against the wall to like figure out the problem and like get it solved using some kind of code. That way, like once it's written up and it does the job for me, I don't have to do it anymore. So that's kind of what it is. It's like, I always just see like areas where it's like, okay, well, how can we make this more efficient? How can we spend less time or less effort on something like this? And it's just like, computers are such a good tool for helping with things like that. That I just, if I didn't find an existing solution, whether it's with computers and software or with like scooter parts or with work holding or anything, it's just like, if there's not an existing solution, like I'm going to beat my head against the wall until I can make one myself. So, I just spent a lot of time doing that. But anyway, like basically my experience with coding stuff is literally just like trial and error and like solving problems. So whatever it is, and I do enjoy it. So that definitely helps. Like I could not imagine staring at a black and white terminal just with a bunch of commands and stuff if I didn't enjoy it. So yeah.
So the last few questions that we have on the list are all, tooling related. So Proteum Machining asked, what's your favorite brand of holders? What kind of heat shrink machine do you have? And what kind of coolant are you using currently?
So those are easy. Right now my favorite holders are Parlec heat shrink holders. I guess at the time that I was looking to buy holders, I was looking at Heimer, I was looking at Parlec, Technics. Maritool didn't have the selection that they do now, I think. So I think it was literally like at the time I was looking to buy holders, they had just sent me like one of their first versions to like test out or something of the heat shrink holder. And I was excited about it. So I was like ready to tool up all my heat shrink stuff. So yeah, I ended up just looking around a little bit, and Heimer stuff was just too expensive for me. I mean, it's nice stuff, but it was just too expensive for me to justify tooling up the whole machine with it. And then there was basically, there was Parlec and Technics, which are now basically the same company. I think Technics bought Parlec.
Yep.
But I ended up opting for the Parlec stuff just because Technics has like this giant lumpy thing like under the cat flange. So whereas like Parlec was like nice and smooth, and I was just like, theirs was like pretty smooth taper. And I was just like, well, the Technics would definitely cause more clearance problems than the Parlec would, so let me try out one of theirs. And I ended up trying some out, and then I liked them, so I just bought a bunch more. So I've been buying the Parlec ones ever since. Very happy with them for sure. And then the heat shrink induction heater is the one from Maritool though. So I scooped up one of theirs. I think it's like made in Taiwan or something, but it's really good value. So it does the job for me. I'm not changing out tools all that often. So it's like to spend 10, 12, 16 grand on an induction heater just doesn't make sense. So, I mean, I've seen other guys who pretty much just like buy induction coils off eBay and, throw some power to them and call it good, which like, that's awesome too. Like I'd totally entertain doing that. But yeah, I ended up buying the one from Maritool. So, and I've been pretty happy with it.
Okay.
And then, was there one more question after that or, coolant. Yeah. So I'm using, Qualichem, the 250C.
Okay.
So I've been using that for, I don't know, probably, like 4 years now. Pretty much like, I don't know, a few months, I guess a year after I started Avant. I started Avant and I was using this like clear stuff. I don't remember what it was called, but I ended up seeing people getting really nice finishes on aluminum and other materials with the Qualichem stuff. So I tried it out and it was like magic. And I was like, whoa, that really helps. So I've been using it ever since. It's great.
Awesome. And then I had a question, how do you approach testing machining, end mill strategies? Because I've seen you do a lot of it. I've seen you write, some white papers on different roughing end mills. What's your strategy when you approach that kind of stuff? And, do you have any key insights that you've come across that you think our audience might really enjoy?
I just try to do it as scientifically as possible, like I'm no scientist, but like, you got to be able to control your variables and like know what you're aiming for. So yeah, I mean, I think the last time, you guys still hear me, right? My screen did something. Okay, cool. I think the last like real test that I did where I was trying to learn something with an end mill was the GW Schultz Illumigator. The first one that I got, I was told that it could ramp at 45 degrees. And I was given parameters for like, the diameter circle I should cut when I'm ramping with that, and the speed and feed and all that stuff. And I thought, wow, that's great. I want to find out what it can actually do. So, and I wanted to change one of the variables. So I forget exactly what diameter they told me to cut, but it was like with a 1/2 inch diameter end mill, I was supposed to be cutting like 1.6 inch diameter hole or something like that. And to me, that wasn't going to work because, well, if you do that, now you're leaving this pillar in the middle. You're ramping around, but in the center of that circle, you're not cutting. Right. So you're leaving a pillar. And for me, my application was like, I want to get to the bottom of the pocket as quickly as possible. so that way I can rough out that rest of the pocket. I don't want to spend time getting to the bottom. So basically, I wanted to change the diameter of the circle and then figure out what speeds and feeds it could do at what angles, what ramping angles. So I basically had my constant, which was like, the tool itself, the machine, the holder, that whole setup, the material, 6061 aluminum, the diameter of the hole I was cutting, the depth of it. And then basically I did, I think, like 3 or 4 different ramping angles I was testing. And then throughout those, I changed, my speed was the same. I was going to cut it at 15,000 RPM, so that was a constant. So I think I tried like 4 different ramp angles, and I just wanted to find out at which feed rates those angles could be done at. So I ended up doing like, 6 degree, I think, numbers may not be exact, but like, let's just say 6 degree, 12 degree, 30 degree, 45 degree, something like that, right? And what I ended up learning was, yes, it could definitely do 45 degrees. And I remember at 15,000 RPM, it seemed that 90 inches a minute was like the fastest feed rate that I could get to without starting to hear some nasty noises, And it also turned out that I learned that while it could do 45 degrees, I was basically getting to the bottom of that pocket in almost the same amount of time with 30 degrees. So, the time difference was like negligible. So I was just like, well, why would I put that extra stress on the tool if it's really, it's a point of diminishing returns. Like if 30 degrees gets me to the bottom of the pocket in like 0.1 seconds, do I really care if I'm there in 0.9 seconds by going 45 degrees and like risking damaging the tool? So after that test, like I said, I did like probably 15 different test cuts. It was just like a piece of aluminum or a couple pieces of aluminum with a bunch of holes in it. So I did like 15 different test cuts, varying the speed and ramp angle with each, and then just taking notes of, the whole thing. And then just out of that, one of those results was going to become my new standard for ramping, whether it's, bores or pockets or whatever. So yeah. And that's kind of how I approach testing stuff. So whether it's tools or whatever, it's like just trying to be scientific about it. It's like, I feel like that's how you actually learn stuff.
Totally. So is that still your go-to roughing end mill?
It has been until recently. I started trying some others. So I actually just tried a helical roughing tool the other day, which we've got a few more of right now because so for one, we're in Indianapolis now, and I haven't found a distributor yet that has the GW Schultz. So I think I got to talk to the one we bought through recently and see if they'll start to order the GW Schultz stuff for us if I want to use that again. But so anyway, I just ended up picking up some helical stuff because it was, they carried helical stuff. And I was like, oh, so many people on Instagram use their tools, they must be good, cool. And I mean, nothing against their tools, but honestly, like, I was not impressed with the first roughing tool that I tried from them. I had a worn out finishing tool from Onsrud because I broke the last GW Schultz roughing tool I had, and until we could order some more roughing tools, which we ended up ordering the helical, like I said, I ended up just taking one of the worn out finishing tools that I use, which is made by Onsrud, and I just threw it in the roughing tool holder and called it the roughing tool for now. And that thing was, it was doing its job. So I'm running this program. I think it was the throttle pedal spacers. And I forget, it's like, 15,000 RPM, about 30 millimeters axial depth of cut, which is like about 1.25 inches, right? Almost full flute length. 9,000 millimeters per minute, which I program everything in metric now, so I'm not really used to converting anymore. But anyway, so I think it's 21. I think it's like 380 inches a minute roughly. So we're going, and then we're doing a 30% step over. So figure, and it's a 1/2 inch diameter tool, right? Anyway, without getting into numbers, I'm roughing out these parts, even the worn out finishing tool is doing its job. It sounds a little different than the rougher, but it's fine. It's getting it done. We're making a bunch of parts. Someone else was operating the machine. We had a little bit of a mistake loading the material, and then boom, snapped off the end mill. Okay, all right, no worries. Let's finally throw in the new helical rougher. Cool, we did. I set the same exact stick out on roughing tools always, just to keep things, like I said, keep things constant. And then, it's roughing. And in the very first cut that it took, I could tell like the sound was just different. It just didn't sound like it liked it that much. So, I mean, it was doing its job and it was working, and it made, maybe a dozen parts or so. And then it snapped. And I was just like, wow, I was just not impressed, So, yeah, it wasn't too fun. I ended up having to, because we had 3 more of these helical roughers left, and I didn't want to eat through all of them that quickly. Like, I ended up having to slow down my program and like go easier on the tool, because it just couldn't really handle it. I mean, all else being the same, like exact same program that worn out finishing tool was using. It's rough. So I can't really say that I'll be buying their roughers again, that's for sure.
Huh. Well, that's some good data, though. I mean, that's great. A great thing to share. We've kind of talked back and forth about helical on the podcast quite a bit, because I've used them in stainless with really, really good results, but I've never, finding a distributor has always been a sore spot. And so getting aluminum roughers when I can get other stuff online just has never been a priority.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But I definitely...
Yeah, I used to use those Destiny Diamondbacks, and I really like those too. There's a good chance we may actually pick up some of those again, because I always had a good experience with those.
Likewise. Yeah, that's my go-to right now. So I definitely agree.
Very cool. But any other questions you got?
That does it for our list. Peyton, did you have anything else?
That's it for me.
Well, hey, Eric, go ahead and plug Varus, and then your Instagram. Let everybody know where to follow you and what to look for coming from you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, now you guys know, like, I'm still on Instagram as AvantMFG. I'm also, sometimes behind the Varus posts and stuff too. So you can find us at Varus Engineering on Instagram. Check out our new website at varusengineering.com. We recently, they had a website before, but the guys there have been putting a lot of work in on a new one, and we recently posted that up online. So it's still a little bit under construction, but I think it's pretty cool. It's like we're using Odoo, this ERP system, which is like CMS2. It's like, I don't know, really cool stuff. But anyway, it's supposed to help our business quite a bit as far as like managing manufacturing, bill of materials, routing, stuff like that, inventory, e-commerce, all the stuff, kind of all in one. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Anyway, yeah, check out the website if you like. If you guys like car parts and whatnot, especially for Subarus and Porsches and all that kind of fun stuff. We make aerodynamic things. So yeah, basically what we focus on is aero parts, carbon fiber. Paul runs his CFD computer like 24/7. It's crazy. It'll be like 10 degrees outside, and like we'll walk into the office, it's 80 degrees in the office because Paul's computer's been like running CFD analyses like all weekend or something, So there's like not even any heat on in the office. It's literally just his computer running. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. But yeah, like I said, you can still find me on Instagram at AvantMFG. I'm still there. I still like talking to people. And I'll still post things like here or there, especially what we're doing now at Varus. So yeah, find us there. Buy some stuff from us. Like say hi, whatever. Yeah.
Awesome.
Hi, Mom.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time and coming on the podcast. I know I met you at IMTS last time, 2018.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Are you going again this year?
I think so. Yeah, I think we're both going to try and go. So are you going to be there?
Sick. I definitely plan on it. I mean, I'm pretty close now. I don't need to fly anymore. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, maybe we could do another meetup like we did last time. That was fun.
Yeah, I'm down. Right
well,
on.
Very cool. Well, again, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. I'm sure all our listeners, kind of love hearing kind of the more of the backstory of all these people that we've followed and paid attention to for so long. So we really appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah, thank you guys. And if any of you guys ever get the opportunity to do a nice long road trip, I definitely recommend it. It was I didn't talk as much about that, but like, dude, it was nice. We saw a lot of the country and just like took the time to enjoy it. And, like, it's yeah. Make sure you make time for yourself here and there. That's all. That's all I gotta say. So, but yeah, thank you very much, Dylan and Peyton. That's pretty cool. I'm gonna start having to listen to the podcast. I didn't even realize you guys did this until you reached out. So I'm gonna have to listen.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.